Hey, this is Bitsonline reporting from the Crypto Cannabis 2018 conference here in Denver. And I'm really happy to be talking to Mark Goldfogel. He's the Executive Vice President of Fourth Corner Credit Union, which is the company that's probably doing the most to provide access to financial services for a lot of the cannabis industry here in Colorado. So I saw your talk earlier on, and I was kind of fascinated by the story of how you came to be in this position. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to present here. It's been a ride that I very early on identified with Forrest Gump. I just seemed to be this computer nerd that standed in the middle of a conversation that turned the light of the entire cannabis industry on for governments. And I came about the ride, honestly, a decade ago. My large intestine sprung a leak, and I was quite literally up Schitt's Creek. And in the course of my recovery, I learned how valuable cannabis can be as an anti-nausal, and how valuable it can be after life-threatening illness. And I'm a binary guy, and I made a decision in that moment that said that no one should ever have to choose between being a criminal and throwing up. And I co-founded the first computer system guaranteed to meet any government compliance to legitimize cannabis. And the problem was, at that point in time, there was no such thing as legitimate cannabis. So all of those transactions were incriminating. And it wasn't until a few months later where I had this Forrest Gump moment of a breakfast meeting with the top regulator in the state of Colorado. And I said, well, if you really want to control for diversion, either infusion or diversion out of the system, and you want to have a mechanism for health and human safety, you just build a computer system that tracks it from seed to sale. And he liked the idea for seed to sale, and we filed for the patent on it, and a company was born and a mission was born to give the governments a way to differentiate what a legal gram is. And now we've got 30 states that identify a legal gram of marijuana, and most of them identify it because they've used this same paradigm that says I've controlled it from the grow out. So the next logical fight, and the real fight that needed to happen, is banking. And banking doesn't have a premeditated bias against marijuana. I think it is safe to say that the same percentage of the population that smokes marijuana are bankers as is the rest of the world, although they're certainly more closeted about it because they can lose their job for it. But it's not about bankers. Bankers aren't interested in supporting the industry because the underlying laws that are federal laws that support banking don't support this industry. And so it really was incumbent upon me to join up with the Fourth Corner Credit Union, predominantly as a missionary, to bring forward the idea that this banking paradox is untenable, and you can't have a state government say something is completely acceptable and taxable and revenued based on this paradigm, and a banking industry say, well, I don't care, state. We are banks and we're sovereign. Well, banks aren't sovereign. Banks are responsible to the state or the federal agencies that appoint them. And the Fourth Corner Credit Union, through all the right channels, doing all the right things, received a charter from the state of Colorado to be a credit union under the one irrevocable condition that we support the hemp and cannabis movement. And the reason that's so critical is the movement is a group of people that believe in the same thing. That is not people breaking the law. That is all of us believing in a different paradigm and a different reality, and we deserve that right to bank. And the Fourth Corner Credit Union was founded upon those principles. And it is those principles that have let us bring forth this legal fight. And we're very fortunate to have won the right from the Federal Reserve to bank the movement and to bank everybody but the direct license holders so that this movement can coalesce its funds and end prohibition properly. And it's a beautiful win for us, and it's a beautiful win for the entire industry. The other thing that the credit union can do is really march forward publicly while other financial institutions are actually solving this industry at risk to themselves, but doing so because they understand the same thing we understand, which is this is a health and human safety issue. Having this cash running around loose on the streets is insane, and it's dangerous.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think what you said then doesn't go into the full depth of the fight that you've had. It's gone on for 4 years, is that right?
It has gone on for 4 years, and it involved a lawsuit with the Federal Reserve Branch of Kansas City. The lawsuit was heard in the 10th District Court, and the judge was actually very complimentary to our cause, but basically said, while I understand that this is a cause, what you're purporting to do is illegal, and case dismissed. And we reiterated what we had said dozens of times in every argument before. We have no intention of ever breaking a law. We've been granted this charter to be a movement for the people. And it does no one any good if we use that to break laws, to skirt it. We need to use that charter to change the course of history. And that's what we've been doing. And we have changed that course of history as far as the Federal Reserve Branch of Kansas City is concerned. We are hoping to change that course of history with the NCUA. And the NCUA is the National Credit Union Association. And we are really hopeful that what happened with the Federal Reserve, which really wasn't a war of power, but a war of understanding, sitting down and understanding that we really have no interest in ever breaking a law. We really have an interest to be an opportunity for the people to coalesce their funds. And we hope that just as the Federal Reserve changed their view on us once that understanding was felt, that the NCUA would also have a compassionate view and an understanding that people's lives are at risk here because our government is not yet fully recognizing things that are taking place to the billions of dollars. And the Federal Reserve is already insuring those institutions today, allowing a credit union whose field of membership mandates that we support this cause is not too much to do. And in a world where this cause has so few financial abilities to take investment because of tax consequences that aren't beneficial to us, it's the only way to legitimize the industry in the states that have gotten behind it.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And you said earlier on in your presentation here that if someone wanted to change the way bankers saw this industry, it didn't take technology, it didn't take regulation, it just took balls. And I think taking on the Federal Reserve is something I would call extremely ballsy. Like, do you really recommend anyone else tries something like that, or are you just happy to take one for that team?
You remember when we started this conversation, I said I thought my life was a little like Forrest Gump?
Yep.
Nowhere was it, well, only one other time, and we won't talk about that on camera, was it more like Forrest Gump when the moment that I realized that the only step that we could take forward was to sue the Federal Reserve. The last thing we wanted to do was sue the Federal Reserve. The second to the last thing we want to do is to sue the NCUA. We are in a lawsuit against them, and we would desperately like to drop it. And all we want to drop it is the understanding that we will not break federal law, that we are here for the movement. So this is not about picking a fight. And anyone who thinks that they should sue the Federal Reserve, trust me, do not sue the Federal Reserve. It served no purpose other than it finally brought us to the table, and the Federal Reserve recognized that the movement is unstoppable, the movement is immutable, the movement is open to any level of transactional validation that is necessary to bring this industry forward, and the movement isn't going away. And I never thought of myself as an activist. I'm a computer nerd. And if I was ever going to have an influence on the world, it would be through systems. And I'm proud of the systems that have come forward for the most part to this industry and what we have brought. And I'm really proud for the most part of what the credit union has brought. But in many ways, the credit union is a double-edged sword because we keep fighting for the legal validation of this gram. And right now, we still don't have it. And so all banks that are taking this money are doing so at their own personal risk. And they're doing so because people's lives are at stake here. It's not just about the tax revenue, but it should be about both the tax revenue and health and human safety from a government standpoint. And there just is no sane argument that supports not passing the Safe Access to Banking bill that's before Congress right now.
Right, and I think I've heard a lot of the more effective activists I've known say, I never wanted to be an activist. It was just circumstance that got me into this. So what stage are we actually at now with Fourth Corner? Are you able to provide financial services yet, or is that still something that that is, pending more decisions in the future?
So the case that we just won recently against the Federal Reserve Branch of Kansas City basically said we are entitled to a master account. We're entitled to be a bank equal to other banks in trading financials, effectively under two circumstances. The first one being that we agree to follow federal law, and that means that the plant touching businesses right now cannot be serviced directly by us. And the second requirement is that we obtain share deposit insurance comparable to the FDIC and typically provided to credit unions by the NCUA. We had been rejected by the NCUA and the Federal Reserve concurrently 4 years ago, and we filed lawsuits against them concurrently 4 years ago. And the NCUA case effectively was waiting to see how the Federal Reserve case came out. The Federal Reserve came out in our favor, and we hope that will be the impetus for the NCUA to sit down and have the same discussion with us that the Federal Reserve had, that we are here to be a financial institution of the movement, and under no circumstances will we break federal law. This will allow us insurance, and then we would be able to open like any other financial institution. The interesting thing about a credit union, and this one in particular, our members are our board. I don't own, when the credit union opens, I will open up a bank account there, and I will have one vote, just like everyone else who opens up an account there. This is a movement and a financial institution for the people. And it's very, I've spent a lot of hours pro bono with this project, and I feel very passionate about it anyway, because even if the credit union continues to bring the case forward, once we're able to service the industry, we can take control of our own destiny. And there is no profit monger in the background. There is all of us as equal members in a nonprofit credit union who have vested interest in seeing this industry grow with integrity.
Right, and you actually don't come from a banking background, is that right?
No, I don't come from a banking background. I don't come from a cannabis background. I'm a nerd, yeah. And I'm first a nerd, and I'm second a musician. And my first computer system was I taught an Atari 800 how to play Handel's Messiah, and it's a very embarrassing YouTube video out there. And I learned early on that computer systems can help humanity frame talents and understandings that we didn't have. And when I got sick and I saw the vision that a computer system was necessary for governments to understand cannabis, that became my sole obsession. And it really is a Forrest Gump seat. I'm just standing here and learning how governments are trying to solve the problem. Well, now governments are trying to solve the problem of how do you trace cannabis once it's been extracted into oil. Well, there's actually nanotechnology that does that sort of thing. And regular medicine and regular military solutions are coming into the cannabis industry, just as seed-to-sale tracking, a paradigm that never existed for another industry, has really taught other industries how granular you can get, pun intended actually, right down to the soil that is in the pot in a plant, right to the temperature, right to the alkalinity. That's a level of understanding of growing that will evolve humanity far beyond the reaches of what cannabis can do.
Right, yeah, indeed. And do you think that with more states and even countries coming online, we've got California now, we've got Canada coming up in summer, I think. So do you think that's going to make your job easier going forward?
I think the most important thing for the banking industry is the Safe Access to Banking bill. I think I don't see federal leadership on this beyond that, but that's some very core leadership. Irrespective of that, Canada understands where it's going, and they're going there very quickly, and they're going there very intelligently. My odds of getting a bank account for a client in the United States are about 50-50, and them keeping it are less than that. It took one phone call to get a bank account for a client in Canada. It's a simple process. The problem is, as soon as you get any international travel of, let's say Canada is going to ship to Panama, there is no transaction mechanism that goes from Canada to Panama that doesn't go through a United States bank that I have found. And this is another great opportunity where blockchain and these alternate currencies, especially as they can get stabilized, really hold a key value. And I think that's what you're seeing here. Most of the people that are here talking about alternate currencies are looking much more towards a stabilized currency rather than an openly fluctuating one.
I was actually going to ask you about that, because if you can secure standard financial services for this industry, is crypto even necessary?
My hope is it's not. The credit union was not built to be a workaround. The credit union was built to be the solution that the governments recognize. And we will pool our money into it, and we'll put our money to our mouth to make sure that we do it right. That is where we stand. And I don't want to be a workaround. I want the credit union to be an institution that every government agency recognizes. Now, what's very interesting is the state of California has proposed an alternate currency solution called the Nugget. And the Nugget is their workaround that actually works in every atmosphere and is significantly less expensive for them to implement than a state bank that doesn't work, because a state bank has to run through the same Federal Reserve that we have to run through. And so the California's version of the Nugget, if we can divert for a second, is that California picks up the cash, puts it in California banks, and makes the dispensaries spend 100% of their wholesale purchases using the Nugget. They cannot buy with cash. And then the grower or the processor or the supplier to the dispensary gets paid back in nuggets with the taxes taken out. And if the grower wishes to have that in cash, they go back to the state of California, and California, out of the same vaults, gives them the cash. That bypasses the Federal Reserve. That makes California complicit in the transaction, which they are anyway, as are all of these states. And it lets California get their tax revenue. And the only thing California has to do is mandate that they cannot sell anything that they don't pay for in nuggets. And that closes the loop on the transaction, and it really shows the world how one of these alternate currencies can really be used at a governmental level to solve problems that our Federal Reserve System just isn't yet technology savvy enough yet to solve in these kinds of margins.
Yeah, there's so many layers of complexity that I think the average person probably never even considered if they're trying to get into this business. So
it really is Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah,
it really is Alice in Wonderland, and I just, every time I think I'm ready to leave this industry, another opportunity presents itself. And right now, I'm really working internationally. I'm really looking at how other currencies and how other countries can help us solve our problems, and I'm really looking at how blockchain solutions and cryptos and how these ICOs are helping solve problems that our government just has not taken leadership on.
Right. Okay then, well, I think that's probably all we've got time for. So that was Mark Goldfogel of Fourth Corner Credit Union. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
John, it was my pleasure. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Okay, stay up to date with all the latest on Bitsonline.com, and see you next time.